It's 2025 and the internet's being flooded with nonsense. There's a lot of people talking nonsense on the internet, especially people with credentials and authority, stating the truth that's sometimes not necessarily true. Welcome back to the little corner of the internet where we talk about psychology and how it affects our daily lives. And as someone in the trenches, I just want to make it more accessible to everyone to understand how our behavior works and how is it that we make the decisions that we make so that you can be more aware of yourself and your surroundings, which is as interesting and important. And in today's video, I want to dive into the topic of when politics meets psychology. I don't know where you live, but I'm sure that you're likely to have voted or you're likely to at least live in a democracy. I want to get into the nitty-gritty of how people with authority speak, because sometimes the truth is rather a lie. As I've said, it's 2025. How many reels do you watch a day? You don't even know, right? Yeah, neither do I. The thing is, how many times today have you heard someone speaking about, I don't know, any topic and saying, hey, there's a study, so what I'm saying is true. But is it though? Like, of course, there are plenty of research on plenty of topics out there, but are they actually true? Especially when it comes to psychology. One of the first things that they taught me in psychology was that there's no such thing as an absolute truth. Every factor plays into the result. And there's a huge issue with proving a point by cherry picking a psychological study and saying, hey, that's why my opinion's right. Because there are too many factors that play into the outcome of the study. Many psychological studies struggle with replication, so cherry picking those findings can be actually really misleading. A professor of mine very early on also taught me this, and this has stuck with me forever, so I hope it also sticks with you. In psychological research, when you make a hypothesis, you're not trying to prove you right, because there's something called confirmation bias, where you're gonna hang on to the first sign of approval of your hypothesis that you could find. The thing that you're gonna do is try to prove you wrong. You gotta prove you wrong. You gotta find every single hole in your thinking so that we can ensure the best results for the world. For instance, let's just say you have a patient, and this patient comes at your clinic and you want to diagnose him with, depression because he has clear signs of it. The thing is, what are you gonna do? Just hold on to those signs? Maybe try to prove it wrong. It's better being safe than sorry kind of situation. You cannot be biased towards it. That's also why in many studies you have people who are actually experimenting with and people who are controlled trials. So they literally do nothing and are just there to spot the difference. Also, I've seen a lot of people in the internet, just especially of psychologists and people with credentials and or even doctors. And I don't want to give light to them, so yeah, I'm gonna keep them on the low. But if you ever think that someone is speaking the truth just because they have a doctorate degree, think twice. Truly, think twice. And I'm not saying this as someone who's the epitome of authority. I'm just asking you to think. Please. The whole idea of this video started when I was browsing through the internet and watching YouTube videos, and I saw a woman talking nonsense, and that woman turned out to be a literal doctor in psychology. And I talked about it to one of my professors also, and she was like, yeah, you should do something about it. I was like, okay, I'm gonna do my best. I've seen the use of psychological studies as behavioral imperatives to to prove a point of a certain political agenda. So let's just say kids don't know how to do derivatives, therefore they cannot be engineers. It's like, no shit, Sherlock. Yeah, it's because they're kids, but let's just add some context. The issue with people proving points with studies is that there's a lack of context. And in psychological research, there's a lot of context needed. Okay, you have the variables that you play with in order to have an outcome for this study, but also our brains don't act like 2 + 2 is 4. Our brains act like this and that and the other, and then they are so fucking complex. Our brain is the most complex machine ever. We don't know why you do certain thing. We can know a bit of why, but we don't fully comprehend the why. And scientists, when they are doing the research papers and they get the outcome, they are forced to write a whole paragraph that most often than not is really long, of them explaining the factors that may have played but weren't taken into full consideration because they weren't the most important. Imagine we take 20 people, random people, and we ask them for their favorite color, and 90% of them say it's blue, and the outcome would be 90% of the people love blue. Things that you may have not been taken into account is that the walls were blue. Things as subtle as these can play a big role. But this study is not about the color of the wall affecting our thinking and our decisions, but rather which was the people's favorite color. Therefore, you cannot put in the outcome this. You will put it in a separate page and you will say this factor, this other factor, this other factor, and this other factor may have played a role in why people have had this outcome. Because when you're watching a reel and people say, most people have ADHD because of this, you only read the headline. Have you ever read a headline in a newspaper? It's literally the most outrageous thing in the world just because they want to catch your attention. You have no context. But then you read the whole article and you realize, oh, now it kind of makes sense. When people are saying people have autism because of that, you're only reading the headline. You have no context. And nowadays, it's just so easy to make something viral because it seems outrageous. It may sound very professional, or it may sound just perfect for your argument, but without context, it's not true. And even if it were true, we're humans, okay? Science works to understand, not to dictate what people should do. We try to understand our behavior through research. We don't force anyone to do anything or say that this is the best way of living or what a certain part of the population should do or what people are limited to doing. Because we cannot generalize. We cannot. It's really hard to generalize because, as I've said, every factor plays a role. Imagine that the study about the favorite color was 6 months ago, and now we do another sample. We ask the same people again in the same place, which is their favorite color, and the results change. Why have they changed? Which one is true? Both of them are true. What are we gonna do now? Make 100 different samples through 100 years, and then we do an average, and then we can say that this is the people's favorite color. I don't think that's sustainable. That's why we have context, and that's why we have paragraphs of people explaining the factors that play. And also, as I was saying, in psychology, just because something's natural doesn't mean it's morally correct or that people should be doing it, because it's just information. For instance, as I've said, the kids example, they don't know how to do derivatives, they cannot be mathematicians. Of course they cannot. They need to grow first. They need to learn other things. But then we have some dudes saying that kids cannot be mathematicians. It's like going around saying kids are not naturally made to do math. Kids' brains are not wired to do math. They need a bit of time. They need a bit of learning. They need different stuff. There are many factors that alter the product, and if you only give a headline, you know nothing about the actual science behind it. You're just holding on to what sounds nice. And this is when it gets tricky and it gets political. Because if you go around saying that kids are dumb because they cannot do math, you get to social Darwinism. And let's not even forget about the OG science meets politics in a really skewed way. Social Darwinism, which is the discrimination of a certain part of people because others think that they are more evolved than them, therefore they can oppress them. That's what happened with imperialism. That's the reasoning behind the divide of Africa. Like, yeah, we can literally slave them. They are less than us. Of course. They're just like dumb. They're not as evolved. Thank you, Darwin. We first hated you, but now we love you because we can use you as an argument for all those things. And then Darwin in his grave was like, what the actual fuck? But anyway, basically important people appealed to authority, proved scientific points that were non-existent or taken out of context. Let's remind the world of this because it has happened. And I don't think it's something we should throw under the rug, the fact that science can be weapon. Because in science we place a lot of importance in like peer review analysis, replications, critical thinking, meta-analyses, which all involve more people. And the more people agree on something or discuss something, the more of consensus and less biased information will be provided to the people. That's why it's scary, because the people who say that's the reasoning, period, tend to be very authoritative. The less amount of people who are aware of that, the less amount of people will be able to criticize it. The more biased the science will be. And as I was discussing about this with a friend of mine, I came to the conclusion that this also interferes with freedom of speech and influence in general. Because we live in a world where freedom of speech is a highly sensitive topic, especially in the US. I don't know what's happening with the US. Because on the one hand, yeah, anyone can say whatever they want, even if it's not true, and even if it's a decontextualized truth, you can say it. But on the other hand, it's like, yeah, but who are you influencing? Let's just think about the amount of people who hear those people. The American Amendment of freedom of speech, it wasn't made in the Twitter era. Like people weren't tweeting about the Great Depression. So yeah, I just think that we need to maybe readapt the situation. I'm not implying that freedom of speech is not something really valuable that we should have as individuals, but that we should reassess the figures of authority and the freedom of speech that they should be having. Also, not saying that they should be restricted, but that they should be more mindful. The thing is, you cannot control how mindful someone is. I know. We have an issue with authoritative figures not being held accountable for the things they say and the decontextualized information. The wanting to spread shit to prove a point and to make everyone believe in what you believe. God, I hear a lot of those messages these days. That wanting to make an argument viral just for the sake of it. It's just so anti-scientific, anti-thinking. What can we take away? As an individual, I cannot go around people again pointing at them and being like, hey, don't spread misinformation on the internet, please. I cannot do that. What a waste of time would that be? And that would be illegal. I don't want to be sued. As always, as a psychologist, if you don't want to be sued and you don't want your patients to kill themselves, you need to prove you wrong. First takeaway, prove you wrong. Second takeaway, and if someone on the internet is saying that this is how people should act because this is how science has proven to work, and they just give you a headline, or they are not even able to state the context of the study, or like the people who did it, the factors that played, all of that. If they cannot give you more information, just think twice about their argument. But I just wanted to tell you guys the importance of being aware, because yeah, I've fallen many times of, this girl is telling me the truth because she's stating the facts with scientific papers. Yeah, but that girl also is trying to sell you something. And there are like 100 different studies on that topic. I don't think there's a clear solution, especially because everyone can say whatever they want on the internet. How do you guys would make sure science is not being highly politicized and being misused for ideological purposes? I hope you have a really nice week, and I'll see you in the next one. And fuck the people who are spreading misinformation. I hate you.